Welcome back with a smiley face. A link of previous episodes is provided into the description of the video. You can also join us on Patreon to listen more unlimited audiobooks like this. You can also visit and shop our ebooks. His Revenge to Restitution. Episode 6. Chapter 37 to 43. Liam. I arrived at Red Moon Pack only an hour before the vampires attacked. They clearly weren't expecting the pack's full strength because only about 50 vampires were coming at the pack. Their attack was sloppy, leading me to believe Warwick may not be as organized as I initially thought. Unfortunately, one of Luna Jesselin's warriors was bitten. With no way to extract the venom, I knew he would die. The vampire had to be newly made because by the time we had stopped them all and gathered the bodies to burn, the bite was black, and the wolf was in serious pain. We got him to their pack doctor and made him comfortable, but that was all we could do. When the bodies were burning, and everything else was handled, I finally found a room and crashed. The lack of sleep the previous night, the stress of dealing with Damien this morning, the travel to Red Moon, and finally, the attack had taken their toll. I ached for Azalea, but I knew she was safe at home. When I finally woke up the next day, I didn't feel very rested. Looking at my phone, it was almost lunchtime, and I had a message from Azalea. I figured I needed to check on Jess Allen and the bitten warrior before calling my mate. Luna Jess Allen was with her pack doctor, sitting with the warrior. She looked sick at the sight of him, probably taking this casualty to heart. "Good afternoon, Alpha," she greeted me. "Good afternoon, Luna," I said. "How is he?" "The doctor has made sure he isn't in pain to the best of our knowledge." "I believe we can only wait now," she looked at me questioningly. I nodded my head. "Unfortunately, yes," I told her. "We haven't found a cure for the bite. In some cases, we have been able to stem the effects but only with the help of a vampire." "Your ally, correct?" she said, her eyes trained on her pack member. "Yes," I said. "Are you so sure that he is your ally?" she asked. "Why would you ask that?" I replied. "Why would he help you if achieving your ultimate goal will end in his death?" she said, finally looking at me. I could see the stress and worry lines on her face. She looked worse than she had at the summit. "I can't answer that for him," I said. "But I have no reason to believe he is lying. Without his help, my beta may never have woken up. My pups would have been attacked by rogues. He left his sire a long time ago, maybe he is content with dying if it is for a good reason." "Very well," she said. She turned back to her warrior and was quiet for a moment. "If you return to my pack house, the kitchen staff will be happy to feed you. You are welcome to stay as long as you need. I appreciate your response and assistance in this matter." "Thank you," I said. "If I may ask, have you considered stepping down and appointing a new Alpha and Luna? I believe you said your son was at college." She sighed. "When I returned to my pack after the summit, my son called to tell me he found his mate. A human, to my dismay. I am happy he found his mate, but getting her to accept him will take much longer because she is human. He hopes to bring her home after the semester is over. I couldn't tell my children about their father after that, I couldn't put that burden on my son. He shouldn't have to choose between his mate and his pack. Your children would want to know. They deserve to grieve their father," I said. "Their father was a better alpha than a parent, unfortunately. Yes, they will be upset, but I fear they may also harbor some anger which I would like to avoid for the moment. Until my son can mate and mark as human, I will have to remain in charge of my pack," she concluded. I could tell the conversation was over. I gave Jess Allen a tight smile before going back to the pack house. I understood all too well the struggle of being raised by a man who was an alpha first and a parent last. On my way there, I was stopped by one of the more senior warriors in Jesselyn's pack. "Excuse me, Alpha Liam, could I have a word?" he asked. "Sure," I said. "What can I help you with?" "Well," he said. "I hate to have to ask, but I don't think we have any other option. Could I ask you to speak to our Luna about passing on the torch? We are worried about her, and with the war hanging over our heads, we need a strong leader in place." I sighed. Before I could answer him, my phone rang. "Azalea." I answered quickly, holding up my finger to the warrior. "Liam," she chirped happily. Hearing my mate's voice instantly soothed me. I desperately wanted to talk to her but not with an audience. "Is everything all right?" I asked her. "Yes," she said. "I just wanted to talk to you." "Did I interrupt something?" The warrior in front of me shook his head, taking a step back to give me space. "I can talk for a minute, sweetheart," I told her, even though I wanted to make this short so I could speak with her freely later. "Well, is everything okay there?" she asked. I didn't reply to her message, making sure I was okay. "Yeah, I took care of things. But I will probably be here another day or two," I told her with a grimace. I hated being away from her. "Why did you call, though?" "Well, I had a thought," she started. "Robert is just hovering. What if I sent him to the city to empty the safety deposit box from Greyback?" I barely heard what she said, though. Another person came running over to us. "We found a vampire that escaped the group last night," he said quickly. My eyes went wide at his words. "How?" "Liam," she prompted. "Did I lose you?" No. I'm here." "Yeah, have my dad take you into the city. I am sure my mom will keep the kids for the day. Please take Azrin with you, though." "Sorry, little Luna, but I need to go." "I love you," I rushed out and hung up the phone. Azalea was safe for the moment, and I needed to figure out how we missed a vampire. "Take me to it," I said quickly. We all took off running. I followed them out close to their pack border. When we got there, there were 4 wolves standing around a vampire tied up on the ground. "We found him running away," one of them told me. "Who are you?" I asked the vampire. Melvin," he stuttered. "Why were you sent here?" I questioned. "I was sent with the others," he said. "I didn't want to. She commanded us." "Who?" "The woman. The woman that bit me," he trailed off. He looked around at all of us, scared. He didn't seem like some loyal follower bent on the destruction of werewolves. "How did you end up alive?" I asked. "I hid. I found a grouping of rocks and slipped inside. I waited until I thought the coast was clear," he explained. "Please, I don't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want this. I don't even know that woman. I met her through a dating app. My mom said I need to put myself out there." I observed the vampire a little more. He looked to be around college age, maybe 21 or so. He had glasses and had a very weak physique. He was clearly nervous and timid. "This wasn't your choice?" I clarified. "No," he almost shouted. "No. I just want to go home. I don't understand what all this is." I looked at the 2 warriors I came with. "We can't let him leave. Do you have a place to lock him up for now?" They nodded. "Good. Take him there, but treat him kindly. Untie him when it is safe to do so. I looked at the vampire. This will be easiest if you don't resist and don't try to harm anyone here. Please, just let me leave, he begged. I don't want to hurt anyone. I'm sorry. I wish I could do that, I said. I turned on my heel and headed to the pack house. Food, I needed to eat. This was much more of a headache than I wanted to deal with. Junior. Grandma and Leo were making us some lunch. Leo was making sandwiches very slowly while Grandma got Isley's bottle ready. I played with Isley in her little bouncy chair. She was a pretty baby, and she looked just like Mom. Mom and Grandpa were acting weird when they left this morning. I hope Dad comes back soon. Mom is always sad when he is gone, and Grandpa comes around more, making her more sad. We helped Grandma in the garden this morning, and she said if Mom and Grandpa don't come home by lunch, then we could make cookies. I wanted to bring some to Delilah. She is a lot happier now that her dad is back. Junior, would you like to feed Isley while we finish these sandwiches? Grandma asked. Sure, I said. I grabbed the bottle from her and brought it back to my baby sister. I held the bottle to her mouth like Mom showed me, and she started drinking it right away. Her eyes watched me the whole time. I heard a crashing sound behind me, and I turned around to see Grandma holding her chest. Leo's face looked scared, and he swayed a little on the stool he was standing on. Grandma? I asked quickly. What's wrong? Leo asked. She gasped for breath and slid until she sat down on her butt next to the broken plate on the ground. Leo looked at me. What's wrong with Grandma? He shouted with fear in his voice. I don't know. I said quickly. I pulled Isley's bottle from her mouth and set it on the table, then rushed over to my grandma. She was clutching her chest with her eyes squeezed shut. We need Grandpa or Dad. Leo shouted. Dad. He always knew what to do. Grandma's phone was on the counter. I grabbed it and found Dad's number fast. Hey, Ma, Dad answered. No, Dad, it's Liam. Something is wrong with Grandma. I said quickly. What do you mean? What's going on? He asked. Tell me what happened. She dropped a plate. We are getting ready for lunch. When I looked at her, she was holding her chest, and it looks like she can't breathe. I told him. Okay, he said. Where are your mom and grandpa? He asked. They went to the city. Mom said she had to do something important with grandpa, I told him. I could hear my dad curse. Okay. I want you to call Aunt Lily, okay? Tell her that you need her and the doctor for Grandma, he said. Okay, I said. I bit my lip. Dad, is Grandma okay? She's fine, Dad said. Just get Aunt Lily, okay? I need to make a call. I will see you soon. Dad hung up the phone, and Leo gave me a worried look. It's going to be okay, I told him. I didn't want him to be scared. Robert, I'm not going to make it out of this, I thought, trying to keep both Azalea and the vampire from seeing how injured I was. The vampire I just killed may have broken my leg when I grabbed him, lashing out with his hands even as I crushed his skull. I was determined to take this one with me, though. I would not be dispatched so easily, no matter how strong this leech was. Marshall was furious and wanted this vampire's head, even if it meant giving our life to do it. Thank you, old friend, I told Marshall. Let's take this with us. Marshall roared at me. We'll kill the bloodsucker. Putting all my weight on my 3 uninjured legs, I coiled myself to attack. The vampire had other plans and was standing in front of me so quickly that I didn't even have time to track his movement with my eyes. A crushing backhand that took the wind out of me landed on my ribs, cracking most of them on that side. It sent me into the wall, where I had trouble standing up. My vision blurred, and I couldn't draw in breath. "Robert!" Azalea screamed. It sounded like it was coming from the end of a tunnel, muffled and echoing with the ringing in my ears beginning to drown it out. That's when I heard the vampire laughing as he sauntered away from me towards Azalea. "Up!" Marshall demanded. Breathing was excruciating, and I could feel my ribs cracking more with each breath. One of them had broken free and was rubbing against its own shattered end, sending lightning bolts of pain through my chest. As I forced myself upright, I put weight on my injured leg, sending me sprawling forward onto my face. I dragged myself up, my uninjured legs bearing my weight as I drew the broken one to my chest. "I'm sorry, Lissa. I won't be making it home tonight," I thought, the only plan in my mind to save Azalea not being one that would end in me leaving with her. I ran forward, my gait uneven because I'd never tried to run on 3 legs. The vampire turned to look at me, his overconfident smile infuriating me as I blinked furiously to keep the blood out of my eyes. I once again coiled myself to spring forward, this time able to do it as he waited for me. I felt his arms close around me, his hands meeting near my spine and locking together as he began to squeeze. I'd aimed well, though, and he'd fallen into my trap. As I felt my spine snap and the bottom half of my body faded away, my front legs rested on the vampire's shoulders. I looked down, and I saw him staring up at me with a cry of victory upon his lips. Before I finished my final task, my eyes found Azalea. She had tears pouring down her face, and she looked frozen in place, unable to move as she watched the vampire crushing me. "Robert," Azalea sobbed. I locked eyes with her, pleading with her to take the opening I made her go now. I roared aloud. Being shifted still, it only came out as an angry howl. My vision was beginning to dim around the edges as I wasn't able to draw in breath anymore. Now unblocked, I saw her move towards the door as the vampire tried to end me. The vampire snapped his head to look at Azalea as he heard her move behind him, and his grip loosened on me as he began to drop me to go after her. "Not so fast," I thought as I opened my mouth wide and, with all of the strength that remained in my upper body, pulled him tightly to me with my paws resting on his shoulders. I bit down on his head, my teeth crashing into his neck. His skin was much tougher than the other vampire, and I struggled to break through it. He squeezed with new desperation, now aware of his impending death. My teeth finally broke through, and they scraped against his spine as I tried to rip it free from his body. The vampire fell to his knees under me, sending waves of both numbness and pain through my body as my spine tried to reconcile the irreparable damage already done to it. We collapsed in a growing puddle of blood on the floor, and I was able to move my head enough to free the vampires from his body. I let it fall from my mouth and tried to take a breath that wouldn't come. The darkness engulfed my vision, and I knew that my time was up. As I faded into the ether, all I could think was, "I hope that was enough, Liam." Chapter 38 Azalea. I looked at Robert in horror. No, he couldn't do this, he couldn't let himself die like this. If I left him, there was no way he would survive. If I stayed, I might be able to heal him. But I could see it in his wolf's expression, he didn't know if he could kill this vampire. He was giving me all the time he could. Robert had the vampire away from the front doors. I dashed out from the desk, holding my still bleeding hand, and hurried to the front doors. There were 3 sets of doors. I threw my weight into the closest ones to me, trying to push them open. I was met with resistance from the locked doors. I moved to the next set, pushing on them frantically. I heard a thud behind me and looked over my shoulder to see the vampire holding Robert's wolf falling to his knees. If Robert couldn't stop him, he would be after me soon. I moved to the last set, catching a glimpse of our car pulling up to the curb outside. I pushed on the door only to realize it too was locked. Looking through the glass panes, I realized that a bar was placed through the handles on the outside. They locked us in here with the vampires. We weren't supposed to leave here alive, at least not through the front. I pounded on the door as Azran stepped out of the car. His ears caught the noise, and he was over to the doors in an instant. He ripped away the bar keeping me inside, and the doors flew open. He caught me as I started to fall forward. Vampires! I said quickly. Before I knew it, Azran grabbed me up and pushed me into the back seat of the car. He slammed the door before I could tell him to help Robert. I turned to the front as Azran climbed into the driver's seat. The car seemed to move before his door even closed. You have to go help Robert. I shouted. No, Luna, I need to get you away from here and safe, he said in a calm voice. Azran, he is going to die if you don't get him. I argued. My eyes prickled with tears. Robert and I had a strained relationship, but I never wished him dead. I can heal him. No, we need to get clear of this area now. Azran said more aggressively. What about Lissa and Liam? I can help him, just go back, I begged. Azran was silent as he sped away from the bank. I sat back in the seat, trying to hold back the tears that wanted to fall. Liam. I needed to tell Liam. I pulled my phone from my bag and dialed his number with shaky hands. Liam, I said as he answered. Azalea, what's wrong? He asked quickly. Your dad, I said in a choked voice. Azalea, what happened? There were two. I couldn't do anything, I gasped. Did something happen with my dad? Where are you? Liam, I'm so sorry, holding back the tears was an impossible task. Azran reached back and took the phone from my hand. I heard him murmuring to my mate, but my mind was stuck on what had just happened in the bank lobby. Liam sir, Azran's voice came over the phone. Azalea wasn't being clear, but I was worried something had happened. Junior's phone call came only a minute ago. My mother being in pain wasn't a good sign. Azran, what is happening? I asked expectantly. Robert and Azalea were attacked within the bank, he said in a hushed tone. I arrived when she was trying to get out. It looked like your father was too hurt. Where are you now? I asked. Headed away from the city, he said. No, I told him. Find something and stay there. Drive around just in case they are watching you. Do not lead them back to the pack. Understood, he answered. I am leaving now, it should only be a couple of hours until I can get there, I told him. I will make some calls about the bank. I have some friends in the police department, but I need the information. My mind was reeling. My father was dead. Azalea was alive, and my father died letting her get away. There were so many questions that needed to be answered here, but all I could think about was getting to Azalea and figuring out how to tell my mother. She may have been his chosen mate, but she still loved him. Sir. Azran said. I am sorry. Thanks, I said. Keep this contained until I get there. I should be the one to tell my mother. Understood, he said. The line closed, and I let out an unsteady breath. My phone chimed with a message. Lily D and I are on the way to your parents. Is something happening? I couldn't respond right now. She would get there, help my mom, and make sure the kids were okay. I needed to get to Azalea and make sure this stayed contained. It took too long to get to Azalea. I ran as far as I could in my wolf form but had to meet Felix outside the city to shift and complete the drive. A large wolf running through a bustling city would be suspicious. Felix took me straight to the hotel where Azrin and Azalea were waiting. I stormed my way to the room, all patience lost. The door opened as I approached, and I walked in to find Azalea sitting on the edge of the bed. Her head snapped up, and I caught her as she flung herself at me. "Liam, I'm so sorry," she cried into my neck. I held her tightly, relieved that she was okay. "Shhhh," I tried to console her. "Are you okay?" I asked. She pulled away from her, her face glistening with tears. "I'm okay, thanks to Robert." "Liam, are you okay?" I blinked for a moment. "I don't know," I said softly. Her hands came up to cup my face. "I wanted to help him," she said. "We would never have come if I had any idea we would be ambushed like that." I just nodded at her. "The important thing is that you are safe. I need to meet with my contact in the police department, but then we need to get back," I told her. All I had felt since her phone call was a hole in my chest, so I was acting as I knew an alpha should right now. I was handling the situation. Azalea laid her head against my chest, wrapping her arms around my waist. I hugged her close and turned to look at Azrin. He was watching with a blank expression. Felix stood in front of the closed door. "Where were you?" I asked in a cold voice. "I was on an errand, sir," he answered in a level tone. "Why?" I growled, my anger rising. It was filling the hole within me, and I was directing it right at Azrin. "Liam," Azalea said, pulling away from me. I looked at her. "No," I said sharply. "I asked Luna if it was all right when we arrived at the bank." "Alpha Robert, do not say his name." I cut him off loudly. "Liam, he did ask." I agreed, and your father had no objection that he voiced either, Azalea tried to reason. "You were tasked with ensuring her safety. Whether my father was present or not, that was your job." I yelled at him. "Liam, no. Now my father is dead, there is a mess to clean up, and she got hurt." I shouted, ignoring Azalea's protests. "My apologies," Azrin said. "Get out!" I demanded. Azrin turned and left the room as Felix stepped aside. Azalea was looking at me with a scared expression. "Felix," she said softly. "Will you give us a minute?" Felix nodded and left us alone. I could feel Azalea's eyes on me, a tense silence settled between us. Azalea didn't say anything, though. She grabbed my hand and pulled me over to the bed, making me sit with her. Her hand came up and caressed my cheek gently. "Everyone's gone," she whispered. "It's just us." Her eyes bore into me, seeing right through everything. "It's okay," she whispered. Her expression was commiserate as her thumb gently moved back and forth across my cheek. My eyes stung, and I lost the battle. Warm wetness fell over my lashes and onto her fingers. "He's gone," I whispered. She nodded. "I know," she reassured me. "We never resolved things." The words fell out of my mouth, but they were true. We never actually reconciled things after the summit. We fell into this awkward pattern of toleration. "Liam, your father knew you cared about him," she said. I shook my head. "He apologized but didn't." "I never." "I should have, I had no idea what I should have done." "However, it didn't matter because my father was gone, and there would be no reconciliation. "It's okay," Azalea said. She pulled me close and encircled me in her arms. Her fingers ran along the back of my head as I let myself lean into her embrace. Shortly after I got myself under control, Felix knocked on the door. "Come in," I called. He came with his normal stoic expression on. "Detective Miller is here to see you," he said. "Please, bring him in," I said. I stood with Azalea, who draped her arm around my waist. I appreciated her presence. "Good evening, Liam," the detective said as he came into the room. "Ted," I greeted him. "Wish this was under better circumstances," he said. "I do have good news, though. I was able to cover this up almost entirely." "I appreciate that," I told him. "I am going to need you to make a donation to the Dawes re-election campaign," he said with a frown. I sighed. "Yeah, whatever it takes," I told him. "I was also able to get your father's body. Your uncle will be receiving it tomorrow," he explained. "Thank you for handling this," I said, reaching to shake his hand. "Of course," he said. "I'm sorry for your loss." The detective nodded his head and took his leave. "Should we go home?" Azalea asked. I watched the empty doorway, knowing Felix stood outside. I hesitated. Going home meant that my mother made it all the way to retirement with my father, then lost him to war. "If you want, I can tell Lissa," Azalea whispered, reading my mind. "No," I said, steeling myself. "It should come from me." We stepped into my parents' house. Lily sat on the couch next to my mom, and Damien stood in the doorway leading to the kitchen. "Liam," my mom said, looking up. "Hi, Mom," I said. "Liam, where is your father?" "What is going on?" she asked quickly. Azalea looked at me with concern. "Something happened today," I started. "Why don't Lily, Damien, and Azalea get the kids home, and we can talk about it?" My mom's face grew even more worried, and her lip quivered. "Go hold her hand," Azalea linked me. She nodded to me before heading down the hall to the kids' rooms. I moved over to the couch and sat down next to my mom, taking her hand in mine. It only took a couple of minutes before Azalea came down the hallway carrying Isley and holding Leo's hand. He was rubbing his eyes sleepily. Junior followed behind them, and I could tell by the look on his face that he knew something more was happening. Damien came over and grabbed up Leo, who hugged him around the neck and laid his head down on Damien's shoulder. Azalea gave me a tight smile as Lily got up to follow her and Damien out. As the door closed, my mother turned her full attention to me. "He's gone, isn't he?" she asked in a broken voice. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said. She squeezed my hand. "That was the pain, wasn't it?" she asked. I nodded my head. "What happened?" Tears were slowly leaking from the corners of her eyes. All of a sudden, she looked older, which only hurt me more. Azalea and Dad were attacked at the bank when they were leaving. Vampires cleared it out and tried to get Azalea, I told her. Dad defended her and kept them occupied so she could get out. It was 2-on-1, though. Azalea said he struggled with one of them. "So he saved her?" she asked breathlessly. I nodded. "Yes, he kept the vampires busy so she could get away. She wanted to heal him or try at least, but he told her to run, and she listened." My mom pursed her lips and nodded her head. A small sob escaped her lips. "Of all the ways that dumb wolf could show you that he really accepted your mate," she said through a tear-filled laugh. "He had to go and get himself killed." The words were just too much. "Mom," I whispered. I know he struggled to show it, Liam, but your father loved you. He was finally coming around to Azalea. I think he was actually starting to respect her, she said. I know, Mom. I never told him, but I knew after our argument at the summit. He came to tell me. I should have told him I forgave him, I told her. She shook her head. That wasn't your job. She pulled me into a tight hug, and I let her quietly cry into my shoulder. Chapter 39. Warwick, did you find out what was in the stupid wolf's deposit box? I asked. No, my useless minion answered. But the former Alpha is dead, sir. Where is the Luna? I questioned. She got away. The two weren't enough to overwhelm the former Alpha, he answered. I rolled my eyes. Incompetence. I stood. Is there anything else? I have a meeting to attend. There are two of them traveling around together, he told me. We have been able to follow them through various means, but our latest tales went missing. And? I asked, bored now. We think they might be getting closer to finding us. I laughed. Let them come. Two little puppies can't stop me. We just aren't ready yet. If they were to find us, I could just snap their necks, I said. This conversation was boring me. I headed toward the door, ending the report. I only needed one more piece on my side before my victory was guaranteed. Azalea. When we got back to the pack house, Azlee was still sleeping, and Leo went down immediately. Junior wasn't so easy to persuade, though. What happened? He demanded while I tried to tuck him in. His eyes were on my bandaged hand. Nothing that you need to worry about tonight, I lied. I didn't particularly enjoy having to lie to my kids, but I wanted to tell them all together and let Liam control how that happened. Grandma was hurt. Was it Grandpa? Was it their bond? He asked. I sat on the bed next to him and brushed his floppy hair out of his face. He was a literal copy of Liam and way too smart for his own good. Can you trust that your dad and I will tell you everything tomorrow? If I couldn't get him to drop it blindly, then maybe a bargain would get me there. I resolved to ask Lissa if Liam was the same way at this age. I'm going to be Alpha, and I need to know these things, he argued. Yeah, you'll be the Alpha, I agreed. And it's a huge responsibility. One so big that sometimes, it feels like there's a rock on your back, making it impossible to move. He tilted his head to one side and listened intently. Being an Alpha can be a tremendous burden for many reasons. It doesn't have to be when you're no longer an Alpha, either. It will be very important that you know these things one day, but right now, you enjoy growing up. So, for tonight, you let me worry about Grandma and Grandpa. Tomorrow, we'll tell you everything important I am. He frowned, his little eyebrows furrowing as he thought about what I said. Okay, he said, letting out a heavy breath. He pulled his blanket up and laid back on his pillow. I stood, leaning forward to kiss his forehead. Mom, he stopped me from leaving. Yeah, sweetheart. I said. Would it make it easier to carry the boulder with someone? He asked. I smiled at him. That's why every Alpha has a Luna and a Beta. They help make that boulder a little easier to carry. Junior nodded, accepting my answer. When Liam finally came home and climbed into bed, I could feel nothing but sadness coming from him. I laid on my back, and Liam climbed into the bed, resting his head on my middle. He hugged me tightly, and I ran my fingers through his hair, hoping to give him any comfort I could. I laid still for him, and we fell asleep in that same position. When I woke up in the morning, I found Liam on the couch nursing a cup of coffee. "Hey," I said, sitting up. "I didn't want to wake you," he said. I climbed out of bed and went over to him. "How are you feeling?" I asked. He frowned, as Lee started to fuss over the baby monitor. "I'll get her," he said, standing. He left the bedroom and went to get our baby girl. When Liam came back, I was pulling on clothes for the day. Liam sat back down on the couch, cradling Isley to his chest. "Do you want me to call Missy home so we can tell them all together?" I asked him softly. "That's probably best," he sighed. Isley's tiny hand clutched Liam's rough finger as he moved it gently from side to side. "Do you want some breakfast?" I asked him. He shook his head. "Not today," he whispered. I knew he wasn't ready to face anything yet, so I left him alone with Isley to call Missy and ask her to come to the pack house. She didn't answer at first but called me back almost immediately. Liam came down after breakfast with Isley, and Missy arrived soon after that. She was looking more tired than usual. We took all the kids into the lounge and sat down on the couches together. "What is going on?" Missy asked, looking between Liam and me. "Something happened yesterday," Liam told her. "You all know that bad people are trying to hurt our pack," I said, looking at Leo and Junior in particular. I wasn't sure if they could fully grasp the concept of war with how young they were, but it wasn't something we could exactly hide. Leo nodded his head, and Junior just gave me a discerning look. "These bad people will stop at nothing to hurt our family," Liam continued. "Yesterday, they tried to hurt your mother." "Wait, we were attacked?" Missy questioned with wide eyes. "Not exactly," I answered her. "Grandpa and Mom went into the city to take care of some things," Liam explained. "And while they were there, those bad people tried to get to your mom. Grandpa stopped them." Liam paused, and I could see the wheels turning in Missy's head. Leo was still waiting for Liam to finish explaining. Junior looked like he was thinking hard about something. Missy gasped, bringing her hand to her mouth. "No," she said. I looked at Liam, who didn't seem capable of voicing the words. "I'm very sorry, guys. Grandpa got too hurt, and he passed away," I said. Leo's eyes began to water. "So he is dead?" he asked. "Yes, baby, he is dead," I answered him. He scooted closer to Missy, who put her arm around him. She had tears in her eyes too. Junior stood to his feet, his little fists balled. He stormed out of the room silently. I placed my hand on Liam's back as we watched him leave. "How is Grandma?" Missy asked softly. "Your grandmother is a strong woman. She will be fine in time," Liam said. Missy nodded at him. I looked at Leo, who was holding back his tears. "Leo, are you okay?" I asked him. He nodded his head. "Junior says I have to be brave when bad stuff happens because we are black furs," he explained. "Grandma will need us to be brave." "It's okay to be sad, sweetheart," I told him. "Can we go to Grandma's house and give her hugs?" he asked. "Let's give Grandma a little space. Maybe tomorrow," I said. Liam nodded. "Missy," I said, looking at my daughter. "Was it?" she trailed off. "Yes," Liam answered. "They figured out where your mother was and came after her." "And you still think it's safe for my mate to be on your little research mission?" she asked darkly. "Missy," I scolded. "This is not the time." She was holding back tears, the fear written clearly on her face. "Wake up! You lost your adopted father. Now our grandfather is dead. Who's next? She retorted. She leaned over and kissed Leo's head. I got to go, okay, buddy. She unwrapped herself from him and left the room. I sighed and looked at Liam. I'll go talk to her, I said, standing. I chased after her and found her sitting on the bottom of the stairs, dashing tears from her eyes. She gave me a sour look as I sat down next to her. I don't want to talk, she grumbled. I know this isn't easy, I told her. Maddox is gone, so you are feeling incomplete. Now this happens, and not only are you sad, but you are more worried about him. Missy crossed her arms over her knees and laid her head down on them. I could hear her sniffling. I reached up and rubbed her back gently. I am sorry you have to go through this, I said. You are allowed to feel. Let it out. How does this end? Her voice came out muffled. I don't have the answer to that, I admitted. I can only hope that we can end this soon. This sucks, she said. I let out a laugh. Yes, it does suck, I told her. I scooted closer to her and wrapped my arm around her. It sucks when things feel like they are completely out of your control, and it's a lot to deal with on your own. You haven't exactly had a break since before your birthday even. She shrugged. An idea hit me. What about taking a few days off of school? I asked her. She sat up, giving me a skeptical look which made me laugh. Yes, school is important, and I want you to graduate, I said. But I also know that with everything going on, you are probably struggling to get through class most days. What if I call Lemon and see if you can stay with her for a couple of days? Help out around the inn, have some girl time. Missy's eyes went wide. Really? That would be okay, she asked. I think it will be fine for a couple of days. Maybe some time away from the pack will get your mind off Maddox, I said. Her expression dropped at that. Okay, I laughed. Maybe not. I bet Lemon can help distract you some, though. Thanks, she said. Go home and pack, I told her. I'll see if Austin or Felix can drive you out there in a bit. You can stay in the cottage or with Lemon, I'm sure. Missy wrapped her arms around me tightly. Thanks, she said into my shoulder. Thanks, Lemon. She really needs a getaway, I thanked Lemon over the phone. I'll have her dropped off at the inn by dinner. I hung up the phone and pushed the bedroom door open. Liam was sitting on the bed, looking at a photo. I came over to him, stopping in front of him. I looked down at the photo, it was of him and Robert. When was this taken? I asked. My alpha ceremony, he said quietly. It was one of the only times I could remember my dad looking proud. I took the photo from his hand and set it next to him. I wrapped my arms around his neck and straddled his lap. I think Robert was proud of you but had a hard time showing it, I told him. You don't have to defend him. He was not exactly warm to you even after years of marriage, Liam said. I shook my head. We had our problems, and he had his doubts, but it wasn't like he meant me any harm. He just felt strongly about the safety and perception of the pack. I thought back to the first time we sat down to dinner with Lissa and Robert. I stood between Robert and Liam, trying to mend their relationship. There was a flicker of recognition, of validation as Liam's mate that night. Liam had a uniquely strained relationship with his father, but there was still love between them. He was emotionally stunted, Liam puffed. Maybe, I said. But he was your dad, and you still loved him. Liam buried his face in my neck, and his hands snaked around my waist. What would I do without you, he sighed. We were quiet for a while, just sitting there holding each other. What can I do? I asked, breaking the silence. Chapter 40. Missy. I rushed home from the pack house to pack a bag. Getting away from everything and hanging out with Lemon sounded perfect. I love my friends, but it was tough being around everyone when all I could think about was Maddox, and they were worried about me falling to pieces. Sol was cleaning up in the kitchen when I got back. Hey, where did you disappear to? She asked. Lee called and asked me to come to the pack house so they could tell me something, I told her. I headed right to the steps to go upstairs. Okay, she called, following me. Want to expand on that a little? My grandpa is dead, I said, trying not to let the words bother me. Whoa, 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 Sol said, barging into my room behind me. You are just going to be like, my grandpa is dead, and that is it. Missy, he is the former alpha and your grandfather. I sighed. Look, I am sad, but I just can't handle any more, I told her. Her face fell, and I could see the pity in her eyes. Lee said I could go to the inn and spend a couple of days with Lemon, so that is what I am going to do. I need to get away from the pack and take a breath. I understand, she said, frowning. I didn't want her pity, I didn't want anyone's pity. I just wanted this all to stop and Maddox to come home. I wanted to get on with my life and not be worried about vampires trying to kill my mate or me. I gave her a tight smile before digging into my closet to find my small overnight bag. I shoved some clothes inside and set it on the bed to find Sol coming back into the bedroom with my toiletries in her hands. Thanks, I said. I am going to go home since you won't be here. Just text me when you're coming back, and I will come back over to stay, she said. I'll get your homework too. Thanks, Sol, I told her. I appreciate you being here and dealing with my moodiness. Of course, Missy, she said. You have been like my best friend since coming to Blood Eclipse. You accepted all of us without question, so of course, I am going to stick by you with all this stuff going on. I pulled her into a tight hug, and she laughed, hugging me back. All right, she said, pulling away. Go spend time with your aunt. Azrin drove me to the human town, dropping me at the inn. It was a little odd that he wasn't with Lee, but I guess that's why we also had Felix. When I walked into the inn with my bag over my shoulder, Axel was leaning against the desk, smiling at Lemon. She must not have heard the bell because neither of them looked at me. There was a bit of pink on Lemon's cheeks. Hey, I said, walking up to the desk. I immediately felt relaxed and at home for the first time in weeks. Nothing at the inn had anything to do with vampires, wars, or stupid wolf bonds that make you lovesick. Oh, Missy! Lemon exclaimed. I didn't hear you come in. That's okay, I said, looking at Axel sideways. You two looked busy anyway. No, we aren't, she said quickly. Axel was just leaving. I could hear how pointed her words were. Axel chuckled. You girls have fun, he said, winking at Lemon. He stood to his full height and sauntered out the front door. Lemon watched him the whole time. When her face turned back to me, I gave her a questioning look. No, she said. Don't even think it. He checks up around here more after that whole thing, she said, not using the word vampire. Okay, I laughed. Just let me know if I should stay in my room or anything tonight. Wouldn't want to catch anyone walking around less than decent late at night. Lemon's mouth dropped open. Since when did you become so crude? I shrugged. Just asking for a little warning, I smiled. Maybe I should send you back to your mother, she grumbled. You won't do that, I said confidently. She pursed her lips. Calling my bluff. I'm going to have to change my tactics, she said, rolling her eyes. Let me just get my stuff, and we can go back to my house. Okay, I mused, smiling triumphantly. When Lemon had her bag, we left the inn and walked to her house. The nice thing about the town was you could walk basically everywhere. The pack was mostly the same, but it was a little bit bigger. So, do you have food in the fridge? I asked, realizing I hadn't eaten anything yet today. And I don't mean leftovers from the inn. There is food, she said. And leftovers as well. I have been cooking more, actually. Cooking for who? Axel. I teased. Her face went pink, and I knew I was right. You know it's cool to date Axel or whatever, I laughed. I thought you wolves only date before you turn 17 or whatever. Then you wait for your mate person, she countered as we reached her front door. I shrugged. Usually, I told her. Some don't find their mate, though. Miss Marcy runs the packhouse kitchen, and she never found her mate. It's a little sad, actually, I trailed off thinking about it. So yeah, Axel has a mate, she reasoned. I wouldn't want to be in someone's way of true love. I set my bag down on the couch and turned to her. So you do like him? I asked. I didn't say that, she almost shouted, which only made me laugh. Why are we only talking about me? I am a boring adult. Let me hear the latest on the whole Maddox vs. Vlad debate. I haven't seen you in forever. I swallowed and looked away from her. Let's make dinner, I'm starving, I said, changing the subject. I headed to the kitchen and went right for the fridge. Oh, you have meat? I said, searching through things. There's lettuce, tomatoes, cheese. And some sour cream. We are so having tacos. Lemon gave me a curious look as she grabbed the open bottle of wine from the fridge door. Since when did you learn to cook? Since I moved out of the pack house, I said, shrugging. Lemon held up a finger before going over to the cabinet and getting a wine glass. She poured herself a generous portion and took a long sip. Okay, back that up. You moved out, she asked. I sighed and started pulling food from the fridge. Yeah, it's kind of a long story, and there is a lot of wolfiness involved, I told her. You let me finish this glass, and you can lay it all on me. Sounds like you need to talk about it, she said. Are you sure? I know you mostly stay out this stuff. Yeah, she said. If you need to talk, I am here, even if I don't understand every bit of it. I'll just tell you when I am lost, deal? Deal. Now, where is the frying pan? Lemon. Missy and I talked about everything that had happened between her, Maddox, and Vlad until well after dinner. I tried to be patient and let her talk, only asking questions when I wasn't sure what she was referring to. When I sent her to bed, I felt slightly overwhelmed. The poor girl had been through so many downright traumatizing things in the past couple of months, yet here she stood. Maddox's safety and what would happen to Vlad were the biggest things that weighed on her heart. I couldn't get to sleep that night, my mind was continually trying to wrap itself around how different of a world Missy, Axel, Azalea, and everyone else lived in. I couldn't help but feel inadequate in my own experiences. When I was her age, I was partying, getting too drunk, and forgetting how I got home. Missy lived with her wolf equivalent of a husband who was off playing detective. I had been solely focused on what would happen if I let myself fall in love with Axel and his mate showed up. I was only worried about getting my heart broken. Now, new worries were invading my thoughts. If I decided to be with Axel, what danger would I be in? Was he going to have to run off to fight in this war and never come back? Could I be dragged into this? What other dangers would follow if I was in a relationship with Axel? When I dragged myself out of my room the next morning, Missy already had a pot of coffee made, thankfully. When we got to the inn, she volunteered to help in the kitchens. Axel wasn't waiting outside to walk me to work, but I assumed that was because he was giving Missy and I space. He came in slightly after breakfast to check in but couldn't stay long. All day, my brain was kept coming back to all these questions and worries I had. I was worried about Missy, but I trusted Lee and Liam to take care of her. They were great parents and never did anything that put the kids in danger, at least to my knowledge. Axel came by again at lunch, and Missy gave me a suggestive look before excusing herself with her food. Axel laughed but brushed it off. We ate in my office, but I was largely quiet, still worried about everything. I need to take care of some things this afternoon, so I might not be back before you guys head home, Axel said before he left. Think you will be okay? Yeah, I told him. We're big girls, we'll manage. If you need anything, call. I will drop everything and come running, he said, more serious this time. I gave him a tight smile that I knew didn't reach my eyes. His eyes flashed with worry for a minute before he headed out the door. I sat at my desk for a few minutes, just trying to get myself to focus. I could understand why humans primarily were ignorant of werewolves. Their lives were so different from ours and so much more complicated. A knock on my door frame pulled me from my thoughts. You okay? Missy asked. Yeah, I said, pasting on a smile. Let's ditch work early. I'm thinking some pajamas, mani pitas, and chick flicks with a big greasy pizza are in the forecast tonight. Yes. Missy said excitedly. You are speaking my language. I was able to sleep that night but not very well. Missy and I headed to the inn the next morning, and once again, she was happy to keep herself busy with chores. Axel arrived shortly after she disappeared to the laundry room. Hey, he said, smiling. Hi, I replied. You look tired. Girls' night last took long, he joked. Something like that, I said, biting my lip. Axel's face fell, and I averted my gaze, trying to busy myself. Lemon, he said, trying to get my attention. I said, not looking up. Axel came around the counter, grabbing my arm to turn me to face him. I let out a frustrated sigh. What's going on? You were all excited to see Missy and have your girl time, but now you are distant and sad, he said. His hand came up and slowly tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. There is just a lot on my mind right now, I told him. Will you tell me? He asked. Please. I looked at him, trying to weigh my options. I liked having Axel around, and I was afraid that my neuroticism might drive him away, or his answers to my questions would push me away. It's nothing, I tried to lie. You're lying. Your forehead wrinkles when you lie, he said, poking the center of my forehead. I had to give in. The questions were eating me alive. If I acted on my feelings, if I were to open my heart to you, would I be in danger like Missy? Would I have to be worried about being kidnapped or those things coming back here to attack me? Axel's face fell, and I could guess the answer to my question. My heart began to sink before he shook his head. Missy is the daughter of an alpha, she will probably always have a target on her back as long as Liam is alpha, simply because messing with her is a way to get to him. Can I promise you there would be no danger? No, I can't do that. My world comes with many dangerous, scary things that most people in your world never have to deal with. But Lemon, if you were mine, I would protect you with every fiber of my being. I would go to the ends of the earth to keep you safe. I'm scared, Axel, I admitted. Chapter 41. Damien. Lily has been distant ever since she found out about me not connecting with Cage. She started to snap out of it when Junior called her for help with Lissa. Of course, she went over there immediately, and I caught her on her way out of the pack house. When Liam and Azalea walked into the house, I knew what I had been thinking was true. Liam was reasonably distant the following day. I couldn't tell how Azalea was feeling because she seemed singularly concerned about Liam and the kids. Not being able to connect with Cage seemed to be making things worse because now everyone was treating me differently. I knew I needed to figure out how to communicate with him again, but I had no idea where to start. Liam found me on the training ground the next day. Until I knew what else to do and we could talk about me returning to my position, there wasn't much else for me to do except train. I was doing push-ups when he approached. He stopped a few feet away and crossed his arms, waiting for me to finish. When I stood up, he had a serious look on his face. "What?" I asked, not disrespecting him with disingenuous greetings. "I called my uncle," he said. "We're going to the clinic." "I am, Liam," I argued. Anger prickled down my spine. This was my problem, not his. "This wasn't a suggestion," he said. His demeanor was cold, not unlike how his father used to act. "Are you going to command me?" I asked. "If I have to," he said. "Damien, how am I supposed to help you if we don't talk with the professional?" "I didn't ask for your help," I pointed out. "You're my best friend, and I am not going to leave this alone," he shouted. "Your mate feels guilty, and so does mine. We are going to talk to my uncle, and you will let him test you however he wants until we can get some answers." My nostrils flared in irritation. "You think I don't know what my mate feels? I am very well aware," I yelled back. "Azalea has nothing to feel guilty about. She didn't more than expected because I am standing here now. Connecting with Cage is my problem, and I will solve it." "No," he said. "We will solve it. You and me. We are a team. When I needed you, you stepped up. You acted as alpha and helped me get my mate and pup back. Now you need me, and I am not going to let you push the rest of us away." That was different. "I don't care. You don't need me to rescue Lily, but you do need someone to shake some sense into you. Azalea is worried that you won't want to live without your wolf and will hold herself personally responsible if you do anything stupid." I took a step back in shock. She thinks I would kill myself? She thinks I would do that because I can't access my wolf. He nodded his head. She is pushing it all down and pretending it's not there, but it is. She is terrified, Lily is too. She doesn't know how to help you, and you aren't letting her in. She and Azalea aren't even speaking. So let's go. We will find out how to fix this. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I saw the look on Azalea's face the night that I had to pull Lily from her office, but I had no idea she thought like that. She is probably the only person in this pack that can relate to my situation even in the slightest. I was grateful to her for waking me up and couldn't blame her for this happening. "Fine," I said. I grabbed my water and towel as Liam turned and headed toward the pack house. I followed him, growing more nervous about what we could find out from his uncle. We walked in silence, Liam never once looking back until we got to the clinic. No one was in the waiting room except Dr. Ron when we got inside. "And the guest of honor has arrived," he said. "Sorry, there was some argument over whether this would happen or not," Liam muttered, walking past his uncle. "I do hope you know that we are all only trying to help," Ron said as I approached. I just nodded my head. "Let's go back and chat first," he said, clapping me on the back. I sighed and followed his lead. We went back to the room where I woke up from my coma. There was a singular bed inside and a few machines sitting off to the side. To my surprise, Lily and Azalea were waiting for us. "What are you doing here?" I asked Lily, going straight for her. She had unshed tears glistening in her eyes. "I just want to help you get your wolf back, Di," she said. "I don't want you to have to live without Cage." I leaned my forehead against hers. "I know, Lilipad," I said softly. I pulled away from Lily and looked at Azalea. "I want you to know that no matter what we find out, I am happy that you pulled me out of the coma. I will never regret waking up." Azalea offered me a half smile and nodded her head. Liam went over to her and wrapped his arm around her waist. "Damien, why don't you have a seat?" Ron said, motioning to the bed. I nodded and let go of Lily to sit down. He came over next to me and pulled out some sticky pads. "Go ahead and remove your shirt. We'll run a couple of tests while we chat." I pulled my shirt over my head with difficulty as it was still damp with sweat. He began sticking the little pads to me and then attaching some wires to them. When he was finished, he stepped back and grabbed a stool from the corner of the room. "Okay, Damien, so you haven't been able to speak to Cage," he started. "Yeah," I nodded. "Do you remember if you could feel him while you were in a coma?" "It's all a bit fuzzy, but no," I answered. "And when you woke up nothing?" "Nothing." "Can you tell me what happened when you shifted?" he asked. I relayed what happened a few days ago in the woods with Liam. Ron listened closely, nodding his head occasionally. "You still have no access to Cage, I presume?" he asked when I was finished. "No," I said. "Not even when you are sleeping?" he asked. "When I am sleeping?" I repeated. "Yes, do you see or hear him in your dreams or unconscious mind?" he clarified. "I don't think so," I said. I tried to think about what I was dreaming about last night but was coming up blank. "Don't think too hard on it. Often, we can't recall our dreams. It's perfectly normal. If it isn't standing out to you, we won't worry about it for now," he said. "So, any ideas?" I asked. "No," Ron said honestly. "This is all new territory, I am afraid. There is not much in the way of available research on this particular matter to begin with. But, if you will humor me, I would like to test a few things." I looked at Liam standing across the room. "I'm not sure I have much say in the matter, Doc." "Test away," I resigned. First, Ron had me run on a treadmill while connected to a bunch of leads. I was not back in shape by any means yet, so I gassed out much sooner than I wanted to. Next, he had me focus on connecting with Cage while he monitored neurological activity. I wasn't sure what he was looking for, and he didn't bother explaining. He wanted to do one more test when we were done with that. "I want you to shift," he said. I looked at him like he had just grown a second head. "I can't control Cage. Why would I shift again until I can?" I asked. "Well, I would like to see if we can get Cage to be reasonable. I would also like to observe what happens. Plus, I believe Cage may have acted out the way he did because he has been cut off from everything. Think about it, similar to when a wolf is cast out as a rogue, and they slowly lose themselves. Cage is becoming more rabid as he struggles with the situation. You and I are speaking about this, and you are around your mate and friends. Cage is cut off from everyone, he explained. What if Cage is out of control again? Lily asked. Well, I would also like to see if Cage will come for you or your wolf. I believe we also have an alpha handy to stop him if things take a turn, Dr. Ron said, looking at Liam with a calm smile. I can positively say that I had never seen this man panicking or uneasy about anything. Sure, he agreed. My alpha tone seemed to work last time. All right, then shall we head out to a more suitable setting for this test? We all filed out of the clinic and made for the nearest section of trees. I wasn't too excited to do this, I didn't want Cage to lash out and hurt anyone. I was also afraid to see Lily's reaction if Cage wouldn't acknowledge her or her wolf. When we got deep enough in the trees, Liam started pulling his clothes off to shift, handing them piece by piece to Azalea. I sighed and did the same. Lily grabbed my shirt before I could toss it to the ground. She gave me a sad smile as I handed her everything else. Liam shifted first, landing on 4 paws next to his mate. Azalea, would you mind staying behind Liam and the doc? I asked her. She nodded, keeping her eyes on my face. Liam moved to block her from me, at least I knew she wouldn't get hurt if Cage lashed out. All right, Dr. Ron said. Whenever you are ready, Damien. Everyone's eyes were on me, making me feel like a spectacle. I had shifted a million times, but it felt like something was on the line. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. Come on, Cage, I thought. Just be there. I need you, man. I focused on my wolf form, imagining my features morphing. Pain surged through my body, starting in the base of my spine and moving outward. It wasn't as bad as the other day, but it was not pleasant. Slowly, I could feel the shift happening. My body curled in on itself, bracing against the pain of my bones reforming. Cage. I called out, hoping to find him. Then, nothingness. Liam. Damien stood in front of us, struggling to shift. I blocked Azalea, although I knew she was trying to look around me. I didn't want her near Cage just in case. Damien bent over, pain evident on his features as he suppressed a groan. Slowly, we watched as his skin rippled over his morphing anatomy. Slowly, he sprouted fur, and his limbs elongated. I could tell he was holding in his sounds of discomfort due to the audience. His shift was quicker than the last one, but only marginally. Finally, his wolf head looked up at us. His eyes were dark, and I knew my best friend wasn't present. Damien? Lily asked softly, stepping forward. His head tilted to the side slightly, observing her. His lip twitched as he smelled the air. Damien, can you hear us? Uncle Ron said. Damien, are you there? I linked him. I got nothing. Cage. Still no response. Cage, are you there? Lily said, bringing her hand up slowly. Damien's wolf bent down defensively, a snarl on his lips. I looked at Lily, who was starting to tear up. Lily, let your wolf have control. Maybe Cage will recognize his partner more readily, my uncle instructed. Lily nodded and closed her eyes. A moment later, her posture changed as she opened her eyes. Her shoulders relaxed but lurched forward a bit, her demeanor transforming to a more timid one. Cage, she said shakily. At that, his ears perked up, and he stood back up. Cage walked over to Lily and started circling her protectively. He rubbed up against her, she fell to her knees, wrapping her arms around his neck. He sat back, letting her hang from him. Cage's eyes connected with mine. A threatening look passed between us. Cage, I linked. He responded with a growl. You need to listen. His eyes traveled from me to my uncle and back. Cage, we know you cannot speak with Damien, Uncle Ron said. We know you are struggling. Please try and stay with us for a moment. My uncle looked at me and nodded, telling me to take the lead. Something happened when the vampire bit Damien. Your connection was severed, I linked him. His expression faltered for a moment. When Damien woke up, he couldn't access you, and it has been worrying him. It seems you can only be brought out when he shifts, but he does not know what is happening when you are present. His head nodded slightly. It's dark and quiet, he finally spoke. I want out. I nodded my head. I know. We are trying to figure out how to make that happen, I told him. Now, he said. I don't have any answers yet. We don't know if we can fix this, I told him. There was no point in being dishonest with him. I could see his eyes widen, and he looked like he was ready to bolt. Cage, you cannot leave. I said quickly. If you leave, Lily and her wolf would be devastated, your pups will be devastated. Give us some time to figure things out. Everything was still for a moment. Cage just held my gaze, and I had to wonder if he was talking to Lily's wolf. Finally, he nodded his head fractionally. Let me out. I need to be out, Cage said. I will make sure that Damien shifts every day to let you out of his mind if you promise me that we can trust you to stay in our pack land and not hurt anyone, I said. I feel the fall, he said. In the dark, the fall is imminent. We won't let you fall like rogues. But you have to fight for yourself and Damien, I assured him. Chapter 42. Cage let Damien shift back, and then we all left the trees. Uncle Ron went back to the clinic, wanting to put down some notes about what he observed and call Theodore. Damien and Lily went back to their room to talk before all the kids came home from school. I walked hand in hand with Azalea back to Pack House, letting Damien and Lily have a lead on us. Now that Damien was handled for the moment and we were working toward fixing the problem, other things needed my attention. What did you say to him? Azalea asked, breaking me from my thoughts. Cage can feel himself slipping, I told her. What do you mean? She asked. I forget sometimes she doesn't know as much about having a wolf since she neglected to pay attention during those lessons in school and doesn't have one now. When wolves are cut off from their pack, their minds slip away. They become primitive, reverting to their most basic forms. It's like evolution but backward. That's why rogues become dangerous, half of their inner self is slipping into this feral state. They lose reason and control, acting on preservation instincts alone, I explained. So without Damien or anyone else, Cage is falling away, she clarified. Yeah, I think so. I am going to talk to Damien about making sure he shifts every day to get Cage out of his mind. It could also help make the shift easier for him as he does it. Cage should be easing that transition for him, but I guess because they aren't connected, that isn't happening. Poor Cage. And Lily, she lamented. I squeezed her hand. Everything will work out. Don't feel guilty about any of this. Damien was bitten by a very old vampire, we were lucky that this has been the only side effect so far, I told her. She just nodded her head, and we continued our path to the pack house. Azalea said she had some things to work on, so I left her in her office with Felix. Before I left, I linked him to have Ezrin come to my office immediately. I sat at my desk with my hands folded, waiting for him to arrive. It was time to address his failure. He took his time, and my anger slowly simmered as I waited. Eventually, there was a sharp knock on my door. "Come in," I said in a flat voice. Ezrin stepped inside. "Close the door behind you, please," I requested. He did as asked and came to stand in front of the desk. "Do you know why I asked you to my office?" "To speak about what happened in the city, I presume, sir," he answered. I nodded. "Ezrin, why did I bring you to my pack?" I started. "To augment the personal security for your mate," he answered. "Yes, and above all else, what is your job?" "To ensure Luna's safety at all times," he said. "Right. Now can you tell me exactly how you are supposed to do that when you are not even in the same building as her? How exactly can you secure her well-being if you are off on a personal errand?" I demanded. I stood as I spoke, unable to contain myself sitting. "I cannot." "I thought she was safe with the former Alpha," he said. "You thought wrong." I roared, my control slipping. "It does not matter who she is with. I don't care if it is the moon goddess herself. If I do not tell you to stand down, then you do not leave her." I could feel my temperature rising. Ezrin failed to do his job, and my father was dead because of it. If he had been there in the bank with them, no one would be dead, and Azalea wouldn't have gotten hurt. He could have prevented it all had he done his job. Ezrin stood calmly in front of me. "What was so important that you decided your job could wait?" Indecision flashed through his eyes. He wasn't sure if he should answer me or remain silent. "I thought because she was with the former Alpha that she would be safe. My mate's birthday is next week, and I wanted to take the opportunity to get him a present," he finally said in a level tone. "That present cost my father his life. Was it worth it?" I growled. Ezrin remained silent. "First, you let her get kidnapped in the middle of an attack. You let her be taken from right behind you. Now you let her almost fall victim to those bloodthirsty vermin and get my father, a member of the Alpha family, killed. Should I be questioning your allegiance and loyalty here?" "No, sir," he answered immediately. "I promised to protect the Luna with my own life and put her well-being first. Yet, here we stand." I was about to boil over. I wanted to jump across the desk and deck him. Our eyes circuited for a moment before he looked down to the floor. "Get out before I cast you out of my pack permanently." My fists were balled at my side, shaking. Ezrin turned on his heel and quickly exited the room. "Argh!" I yelled, punching my desk. The wood splintered under my fist. "Liam, what's going on?" Azalea linked me. Her voice shifted something in me. I didn't think, I moved to the door and rushed down the hall to her office. When I pushed the door open, she gave me a surprised look. "Felix, out," I commanded. Without a word, Felix slipped out the door behind me. Azalea stuffed her phone inside her desk drawer and shut it hastily. "Liam, what's wrong?" she asked warily. I stormed around her desk, picking her up from her chair and sitting her on her desk. I roughly grabbed her face and captured her mouth. "Azalea." He bent over slightly, trying to catch his breath. "Ahem," I cleared my throat after a minute, trying to bring attention to the fact that I was uncomfortably hanging from the desk with his hips supporting me. "Oh," he said, looking up. His hands gripped me more firmly and picked me up all the way. He slid himself out before sitting back in my chair, settling me on top of him. I made a face at him. "Let me hold you for a minute," he said. I nodded. "Are you calmer now?" I asked. He nodded as his arms snaked around my waist. "Do you want to tell me what happened? I need to find you another bodyguard on top of everything else," he sighed. "What?" I asked incredulously. Did he mean that Azrin was no longer going to be with me? Did he decide to go back to Serenity Waters after what happened? "Liam. I clearly didn't choose the right person to protect you." "Wait, are you telling me that you are firing him?" I blurted out. Liam nodded. "I have to, little Luna. My father is dead, and they almost got you. I can't let that go," he said. His eyes were distant as he spoke. He was looking at me, but he wasn't connecting with me. "Absolutely not," I said, crossing my arms. "You will not send Azrin away." My words seemed to bring him back. His eyes narrowed. "I can and I will. I am the alpha of this pack. And I am the Luna. Azrin left with my permission. I chose to go with Robert alone." I argued. He seemed to be getting frustrated, but I wasn't stopping. "You trusted Robert to watch over me before, and this should have been no different. Azalea, my father is dead. If Azrin had been there they probably would have sent more than two." His eyes went wide at my words. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out to contradict me. "You can't be so blind about all of this. They were waiting for me to come. They knew Greyback had that box, and they wanted what was in it. When I walked in and asked to get into it, I'm sure they were alerted. There is no way that was not planned." I held Liam's gaze, not wavering on this. Liam closed his eyes and let out a sharp breath. Without a word, he lifted me from his lap and set me on my feet. He stood and pulled his clothes back in place. Without a single glance, he stormed out of my office, slamming the door on his way out. My chest felt tight at his reaction, but he had to come to his senses. He was entitled to his feelings about what happened, he was justified in mourning the loss of his father. He was not allowed to be illogical and lash out at everyone around him. I pulled my clothes back on and sat down. The door opened softly, and Felix popped his head in a few minutes later. He had a wary look on his face. "Everything is fine," I sighed. He came into the room and sat in the chair near the door. "Sorry about all that," I said, pulling my phone from my desk drawer. Liam had caught me off guard, but I didn't want him to see what I was doing. Felix pulled out a book and resumed reading as I pretended to be busy myself. I snickered once again at the baby book in his hand. He was really excited for this pup. I turned my attention to my phone and reread the most recent message. "Uncounted, so the wolfless little mate is braver than I thought. I must admit, the fact that you have continually escaped my grasp is somewhat irksome but also intriguing. I will entertain this little request. As meeting in person would be foolish on both sides, you will need to acquire a witch to complete a projection spell. Do respond when you have made your decision and collected your witch." I swallowed the lump in my throat as I read the message over again. My plan had worked, and he got my message. Warwick was amenable to speaking with me. Now, all I had to do was convince him to put a stop to all this. First, I had to find a witch without Liam finding out what I needed them to do. Chapter 43. Missy. Spending a couple of days with Lemon was refreshing. I missed hanging out with her. I loved Lee with all my heart, but Lemon and I connected in a different way, probably because she was closer to my age. For reasons unknown, having work to do at the inn all day that was entirely away from the pack was also a nice distraction. I still ached for Maddox and was sad about my grandfather being killed, but I felt a bit better by the time I was headed home Wednesday afternoon with Austin. When we pulled into the Packhouse driveway, Austin turned to me with a giant, cheesy grin on his face. "What?" I asked. "I get to be the one to tell you that your father has Maddox on the phone upstairs in his office," he said. "Oh my goddess!" I squealed. "Go. Quick," he said, motioning for me to get out. I didn't need to be told twice. I threw the car door open and sprinted to the Packhouse. I was to the stairs in a flash. I took them 2 and 3 at a time until I got to the landing. I could see Liam's office door was open. I threw my arm out, grasping the door frame to swing myself into the room. I almost crashed into the desk as I stopped myself. Liam let out a laugh. "Thanks, Langston. Now, we should let the kids talk," he smiled. He stood, and I hurried around the desk to take the phone from him. Liam leaned over and kissed my forehead. "Not too long, sweetheart," he said softly before leaving his office and closing the door. "Maddox." I gasped into the phone. "There's my girl," he said. I could hear the relief in his voice. "When are you coming home? I don't know if I can take much more of this." "I need you," I said. "Soon," he said. "We think we are close. If all goes well tomorrow, it may only be a couple more days." "Really?" I asked excitedly. The fact that we could be back in class together next week was a possibility I wasn't sure if I wanted to let myself hope for. "Yes," he said. "I need you back in my hands. You have no idea. Everything gets worse the longer you are gone," I told him. "What's going on? Tell me," he said. I could hear the concern in his voice. "We would need so much more time than we have," I told him. "I will have to fill you in on every detail when you are here, and I have finished kissing you." I didn't want my limited time speaking to him to be burdened by more sad events. He didn't need to worry about me when he was out there looking for Warwick. "No, just tell me now. What happened?" he pushed. I sighed. "Robert was killed saving Lee from some vamps," I muttered. "Missy, oh my gosh, are you okay?" "I wasn't there." "Liam seems pretty down." "I guess I am okay," I told him. "I would be more okay if he were here. Having him close would be enough, and I would be able to sleep properly again." "Darling, I am so sorry. I hate that you have to deal with that without me," he said, sounding hurt. "Just come home," I told him. "Find where that DK is hiding and come home to me. Everything will be better when I know you are safe." I could feel my eyes starting to water. I didn't want to cry, I hated these feelings. "I promise you I will come home in one piece. There is no way I am letting anyone keep me from getting back to you. Please don't break your promise." When I got home, there was a sign taped to my door. The words "Princess Charity Case" were scrawled sloppily in large letters. I ripped it down, rolling my eyes. Teenagers are the worst. There is a race war literally at our doorstep, and they want to poke fun at the adopted girl. I went inside, tossing my bag down and heading to the kitchen. School had only let out a bit ago, so I texted Sol and the girls to see if they all wanted to come over tonight. I was not a fan of being alone and I completely forgot about telling Sol I was back because of Maddox calling. I rummaged through the fridge and found some carrot chips and vegetable dip. I threw it on the counter and started snacking while I checked my phone. Sol told me she would get everyone, and they would be over in an hour. I texted back, wondering what they wanted to do for dinner tonight. I was thinking junk food and movies. There was a thudding at the back door, and I looked in that direction, confused. The neighbors completely ignored me, and I can't even remember if I had been out the back door since moving back in. I went over and peeked out the dirty glass. There was nothing within sight. I opened the door, and an awful stench hit me. Looking at the door, I found a bag that burst from its impact, painting the outside of the door in its contents. It looked like feces and smelled like it too. I covered my mouth and nose with my hand and scanned all around, looking for the culprit. I caught nothing out of the ordinary, so they were gone. I sighed, closing the door. New Year, more pranks, I guess. Lazy. I sat on the bed folding the small basket of baby clothes I currently had. When I told my parents we were having a boy, I did not expect them to bring a large gift bag to dinner when they came to meet Felix. Everything was super cute and very preppy, as I would expect of my mother's choice of attire. She had a standard, and she stuck to it. Azalea had also given us a small box with boy clothes that were never used by her boys. She said because they had Azalea and she was showered with plenty of frilly things for her, I was welcome to all these new clothes that never got to be loved. I knew she had given all her used items from her children to the orphanage and displaced families that came over the past few months, so it was incredible that she thought to give these to us. While Azrin and Robert took Azalea to the city, Felix had moved our things into a bigger room on the same floor and surprised me with a crib for the baby. I was elated, and he seemed so happy as we put it together and set it aside in the corner. Of course, our day had been cut prematurely short by Felix leaving to help Liam. I was a little disappointed after that because Felix was back to being with Azalea all the time. I thought we would unpack our things and get the baby stuff ready together, but Liam wanted Azrin away from Azalea. Instead, I had been getting our things situated slowly over the past couple of days. The baby stuff was the last to be put away. Felix came into the room, and I looked at the clock, realizing it was earlier than usual. "Hey," I said. "Done already?" He smirked and rolled his eyes, coming over to the bed. He leaned down and kissed me softly. He looked over at the small piles of miniature clothing. He picked up a sweater vest from the unfolded pile. He raised an eyebrow. "It's cute, right?" I asked. He shook his head, but he had a charming smile on his face. He folded the little vest neatly and stuck it in a pile with the rest of the similarly sized clothes. He stepped back, pulling his shirt off in one smooth motion. I did not even bother to pretend not to look, licking my lips in appreciation. "Shower," he laughed before turning and heading to our bathroom. My wolf and hormones were telling me to join him, but I refrained. I woke him up early this morning to satisfy my urges and didn't want to be greedy. When Felix came out of the bathroom, I was standing next to the crib making a list. He stood behind me, wrapping his arms gently around my growing stomach. His fingers rubbed soft circles over my stretched skin, and my shoulders dropped at the blissful feeling. "What's that?" he asked, planting a kiss on my shoulder. I could feel his bare chest against my back, and my body started heating just from his half-dressed proximity. "List of things we still need to get. I have some savings plus that severance my old boss gave me. We should start getting some of these," I said. He hummed, planting more kisses on my shoulders. "You're distracting me," I smiled. "Good," he whispered. His face traveled over to my neck, and the soft kisses started to feel like more. I laid my head back, enjoying the sensation. "Felix," I purred. I felt his smile on my neck. He pulled away and held me a little tighter. "Come to bed," he said. I hummed. In a little bit. I have too much energy. He chuckled. Nesting, he nuzzled into my neck. I just nodded, I guess that was what was happening. He tried to hide it, but he was reading a lot of baby books lately, and I found it incredibly cute. Have you thought about names? I asked. He was still for a minute, leaving his nose right at the junction of my neck and shoulder. Eventually, he slowly pulled back. No, he whispered. We should, I told him. We are getting closer every day. His hands ran over my belly appreciatively as he nodded. Then he reached forward and grabbed my list, holding it up so he could read it over my shoulder. I let him look it over, not commenting about anything I wrote. Do you want a shower? He asked softly. Are you telling me I smell? I asked pointedly. He just laughed, he shook his head. Baby shower, he clarified. Oh, I said in surprise. I didn't think about it. Lily or Azalea would be happy to help with it, he said as his head turned to look at me from the side. I bit my lip. The truth was that I had thought about it, but I couldn't decide. On the one hand, it sounded like fun, and any help with baby supplies would be amazing. On the other hand, we were in the middle of a war. At any time, we could be attacked, or Felix could leave to help protect us. It felt a little selfish to force everyone to celebrate us when such terrible things were happening. Felix grabbed my hips and turned me to face him. He lifted my face to meet his by my chin and looked at me questioningly. I knew he was trying to figure out what was wrong. It's nothing, I said. Don't worry. He shook his head. Tell me, he requested. I sighed. Wrapping my arms around him, I laid my head against his firm chest. It feels a bit selfish to be throwing a baby shower with everything going on. We are always on alert for vampires, other packs are getting attacked, we're trying to find Warwick, and Liam's father was just killed, I explained quietly. Felix tightened his grip on me. We can't stop living just because there is conflict, he said softly. I paused, contemplating his words. I never thought my mate was dumb in any manner, but that was one of the most insightful things I had heard him say. I am not sure anyone would be really into it. Plus, I only really know the people around the pack house because I haven't been here too long, I told him. He was quiet for a minute. Even if it's just a couple of people, if it's what you want, we will do it. My heart paced in my chest. This man who was so hard and cold on the outside was nothing but sweet and soft for me. He didn't care what made me happy. He ate my favorite Indian food and pretended not to hate it. He indulged me whenever I couldn't bear the horniness anymore. He found a new way to be necessary to his pack and fit me into his life. Above everything else, he made me feel cherished with all the little ways he tried for me. I'll talk to Lily about it, I said finally. Felix placed a lingering kiss on top of my head. I let my eyes flutter closed as I enjoyed the safety of his arms. The rest of the audiobooks will be uploaded in the next episode. Join us on Patreon to listen to more unlimited audiobooks.